My daughter's 19F, ex-stepdad, 43M, wants to make amends with her. Should I let him? I'll try and make this as short as possible since I don't like thinking about my situation a lot. If I leave anything out, I'm sorry. In November of 2019, I, 42M, was playing a game with my wife, 42F, and our kids, 9 and 4M, when I got a knock on my door. When I opened, there were two officers and a shy girl who I will call Jane, now 19F. I let them in and the cops explained that Jane was my biological daughter. I had no idea of this, but they brought me a DNA test. Then it all made sense. For some backstory, I had a one-night stand 20 years ago with a random woman I met at a party. The woman was actually married, and her husband, who I'll call Steve, found out Jane wasn't his after Jane took a 23andMe test as a small gift from one of her friends. When Steve found out about this, he immediately blew up at Jane and the mom and kicked them both out of the house. During the divorce process, he told Jane that she was a lie, he would never be his daughter ever again, and he never wants to see her ever again. Jane cried and begged for him because she only ever know of him as her father, but Steve took his name off the birth certificate and went NC. When I asked why she isn't staying with her bio mom, they told me that the mom fell into a depression and started taking drugs. She became verbally and physically abusive until an accident a week ago that caused her to be taken away from CPS. I agreed to let her in, and Jane brought her bags in the house. This was obviously very unstable, as for a while Jane was shy around us. She didn't talk a lot. My wife and I were welcoming to her as much as we could. Our oldest son Alex immediately started loving Jane and tried to spend time with him. He always wanted a sister and spent a lot of time with Jane. Our younger son Tony was a newborn when she arrived, so he just grew up with her and loved her naturally. Over time Jane started becoming more open with us. We got closer and closer, and in December 2020, when the family was having a movie night, Jane kissed me on the cheek and said, "I love you, Dad." We all cried, except me, LOL, of happiness. My daughter is now a beautiful 19-year-old lady in college, and it's like we already raised her for the 19 years of her life. Now to the problem. I got a random message a week ago from someone I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I realized that Steve had sent the message. It was pretty long, so I'll just reword it here. Hello, my name. I want to talk to you about Jane. When I found out she wasn't mine, my world shattered. I kicked her out because I couldn't bear to see her after the love of my life had betrayed me in such a devastating way. I know you had no fault in this, but it still hurts. Over the last year I've realized, my daughter will always be my daughter and nothing can change that. I want to reach out to you so I can apologize to her. Please let me see her again. At first I wanted to tell Jane, but then I remember a conversation about 7 months ago. My oldest son asked about Jane's other father, Steve, and I overheard Jane say something like, "Oh, you mean EX father? He doesn't realize the damage he had done to me and it took so long to recover." I have confided in only my wife about this, and she told me to just leave the message be and ignore it. So now I'm stuck with 3 outcomes. 1. Tell Jane about the message and raise hellfire again. 2. Respond to it myself and see how it goes. 3. Just ignore the message and let our life continue as normal. I'm not sure completely what to do. Update. A lot of you told me I should come clean to Jane, so I did just that. I sat her down after work the day after I posted and we had a long talk. When I said that Steve had messaged her, Jane got furious and demanded to see the message. She wanted to spill her guts out to him. I tried calming her down and she started crying. She said she still thought of him as a dad when the news came out and was scared that he would get rid of her, that she began having a hard time trusting people because of what happened. She hugged me and kissed me on the neck a lot, and I told her that if she wants to respond to the message she can tell me. She said she would think about it. Some days passed by and Jane tells me that she has what she wanted to say on paper. I took her sheet and went to Steve's contact and typed, "Hello Steve. Jane has decided to write you a message herself and send it to you. I have attached it below, so keep in mind that I am not controlling what she says and I won't force her into anything she doesn't want to do." I then attached a picture of the letter Jane wrote. The letter was basically her explaining in detail everything she feels, and she wants nothing to do with him anymore because she isn't his daughter anymore. I closed the chat with Steve, so I don't know if he read it, but I hope he did. I think this should be the last update. I did see one rule on this subreddit that only one update is allowed. If anything else major happens, I'll post it somewhere else. Maybe you could check my profile, but I don't think it will go further than this. Jane, me, and our family spent the night together. Some people asked me to elaborate on the specifics of how Jane got shuffled into my house in the first place, so I'll explain some details. I don't know the full story of Steve's divorce, but I do know that he relinquished all parental rights to Jane. The part where he said he's removing his name from the birth certificate was an obscenity he yelled during the confrontation, but it was never actually removed. When the bio mom became abusive, a neighbor called the cops one night and Jane was placed into foster care. The 23andMe test she took was evidence on how to find me, and Jane was actually the one who suggested finding me so she could at least know who I was. This is all information I got from the people who brought Jane here, so sorry if it appears off. I did ask some more questions about how I was found, but they couldn't fully reveal. So that's all that happened. Thanks for everyone who gave advice.